Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome back to part 3 of the FMS Toyota FJ40 build series. In this video, I'll be taking you through my first round of modifications, which is going to be swapping out the ESC, the radio, the receiver, and finally the wheels and tires, along with some silicone inserts. So you might notice this looks a little dirty and beat up and dripping wet, and it is because I just came back from the second test drive with the modifications done. I just wanted to be sure that I was steering you guys in the right direction with these mods before I made this video. So we're going to work in reverse here a little bit. I did film all of the installation, and I'll take you through the settings on my ESC. It is a Hobbywing 1080 G2 ESC. I'll take you through the settings I have on that. I'll show you the radio I'm using. I'll show you the wheels and tires. And I just have to tell you that I am very impressed with this rig in its current form. So this might be a pretty short video series in terms of mods, because I don't know how much more it really needs. Now, at some point I will get into doing some more scale accessories and installing a winch. I do have the leaf spring kit on order, so I definitely want to do that in the near future as soon as it comes in. It might be, I ordered it from FMS directly, so it might be a little while before I get it. So we'll see how long that takes, but I think that's going to be a nice scale improvement. But I'm kind of running out of things to do almost already, because the performance on this truck has increased so much. It's pretty amazing. And look, if you're into crawlers, this is nothing new. You know, adding weight down low, putting on some heavier wheels, and then swapping out to a 1080 has been, you know, the way to go for crawlers, RTR crawlers, you know, pretty much for a couple of years now already. Like that's the thing you need to do right away. And it's just really cool to see how much of an improvement it makes on something like this, while still retaining the fun factor of this truck, which is kind of this realistic kind of body sway back and forth, limited capabilities because of the big heavy hard body on the top, but it really changes up the way you need to drive this truck, and it makes it a lot more realistic. You know, you have to approach things from a more realistic driving perspective of like you would if it were a full-scale truck. So I really like that. I went out and repeated the same trail that you guys just saw if you watched the previous video of my first test run, where it was all stock except for the servo horn. So I repeated that same trail, super wet conditions, really slippery, but still did so much better. And then stay tuned. I'll have that coming up after this video. You'll see the trail run I just did. So I'll do some split screens with some before and after to show you how much of an improvement the mods make. But then I'm going to have some bonus running video footage where I found a really cool trail down along a stream that is much better suited for a truck like this. You know, the first trail I'm running on, it's kind of an entrance trail going up to where I take a lot of my other pure like rock crawlers, like comp crawler stuff. So it's cool, but I think the other trail I found is much better suited for this. It has a lot more kind of mud and stream crossings and roots and rocks, and it's just kind of a better combination of everything, where a trail truck is just going to be more fun to drive. So definitely stay tuned to check that out if you want to just see some really cool running video of this and just get a better idea of what these mods are going to do. So with that being said, let's get into it, and I will show you guys the install on all of these things that I changed out. And I will just say this, that these front running lights are just, I don't know. I thought I glued these on. I ended up breaking both of them off today. Going down this path of making this truck more capable, or at least to the point where I have it now. If you're like me, you're not going to be able to resist the urge to get this truck into situations where the outcome might not be the best for this pretty looking body, right? You're going to start saying, hey, this truck is really capable now, has really great traction, it's very stable. Let me see if I can do this crazy rock climb with it. And if you make a mistake and it comes rolling down, stuff is going to break. You know, I broke off both front lights today, even though I had them glued on. It happens. So that's the only downside to this, is the more capable you make it, the more likely you are to put it into situations where things could break. But that's ultimately up to you and how much restraint you have while driving. I sometimes can't help myself, but that's why I think I'm going to try running this on different trails that don't really put me up into the big crazy rock crawling sections, because I'm always trying to push the limits of anything I drive. So that's just me though. If you have the restraint to just drive this like a normal trail truck, these mods are still so helpful. So yeah, let's get into the mods and then stay tuned for the next episode, which will be the running video with that I just came back from, with the modifications all done. Time to remove this terrible ESC and go with the Hobbywing Fusion 1080. Should be pretty straightforward. I already have an XT60 soldered on here, and I will likely just be direct soldering these to the motor. It's just one less chance of a connector failure of some sort. Stock, it uses these bullet connectors. At the same time, I'm just gonna pull this receiver out because I will not be using that. I'm gonna be installing my RadioLink receiver. So let's just do this all in one shot. I kind of like this wire loom wrapping that they use here. Everything is very neatly wired. You can tell the FMS, the attention to detail is definitely there for most things. I don't know how this ESC got past them, and the wheels on this truck are just really bad. So it's like someone started out really strong, and then I don't know if someone took over the project and was just like, yeah, slap in whatever ESC you got, and those wheels will do fine. Who cares? So they just use a splitter that splits the steering between your steering servo and your steering wheel servo. So that's cool. That makes it super easy to set it up on the new receiver. You don't have to do any type of channel mixing or anything like that. So that's everything disconnected. We just need to pry these off without breaking anything. Be gone! So I just desoldered these bullet connectors from the motor, soldered these directly to the motor, and plugged everything into my receiver here. I'm just gonna leave this loose for now. I do want to waterproof this, so I will probably just cut the fingertip off of a nitrile glove that I have, stuff it in there, and then just secure this probably with zip ties, or maybe even some double stick tape on the bottom of the glove could hold it. But I do want to run this through some water occasionally. I'll fire this thing up and then plug in the program card and just see what settings, if anything, if we need to change, reverse the motor or something, or I just want to kind of see how everything is set up on here. And then I have a decent amount of programming to do on my radio to get everything to work properly. So let me fool around with that a little bit off camera, and I'll show you guys the results. That was fairly simple. We got our steering set up. We have our, let's see if I can get this in the camera. My remote adjustable drag brake is set up to the knob here. You can see here, so that's all the way off. You can see when I let off, it coasts a bit. If I dial this up, you get a little more drag brake. If I crank it all the way up, you get a much more instant drag brake. Much easier to see when the vehicle's on the ground, so I'll demonstrate that later. But yeah, just cut the finger off of a little shop glove here, and I'm just gonna stuff the receiver in there and zip tie around the wires, and it'll be as waterproof as I need it to be. Pretty neat wiring job. Reuse the factory loom here. Came out really nice, and the receiver, even though it's in the glove, I was able to use some double-sided tape on the bottom of the glove tip and stuck it down right in the stock location. So yeah, came out really nice. So these are the settings for the Hobbywing 1080 G2. Just gonna go through them real quick. So running mode, we have forward reverse, which is your crawler mode. We're gonna stay with that. Battery type, LiPo, sticking with that. Cutoff voltage, medium, we're gonna stay there. So initial start force, this is just how much power you're going to get right, like out of neutral the second you hit the trigger. So if you want this to kind of have like a very soft, smooth engagement, you can set this a little bit lower right now. So your options are 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16%. Right now, this is set to value 3. is 4%. I think I'm going to stick with that. Max forward force, number 4, that's 100%. Of course, you want that. You don't want to really limit your overall power. Max reverse force right now is set to 50%. That's fine for this. Usually on more of like a comp crawler, I would set it to 100% and just fine tune it from my controller if I needed to. Max brake force almost doesn't matter because there is a drag brake set up, but getting to that. Initial brake force, same deal. That would be just for if you had this in a regular forward reverse brake setup and not the crawler mode. So we don't really even need to get to those. What we are interested in, however, is number 9, which is your drag brake. And right now this is set to 100%. So that's just your overall holding power. So I definitely want this to have the strongest drag brake that it can. Again, because it is a brushed motor and typically they're not as good as brushless. So we're gonna leave that at 100%. And now here's an important one. Drag brake rate, and this is what was really off on the stock ESC. The drag brake rate is how quickly it will engage that drag brake. So the lower this value, the more smoothly it's just gonna it's like pressing on the brake nice and smooth in a real vehicle versus just jamming your foot on. So I don't see any advantage to having this set high at all. So I'm gonna go and drop this down actually to level 1 and see if that really helps to smooth this out. Number 11, neutral range, not messing with that. Start mode punch. I'm gonna leave it. This is the highest value, so it's gonna have the most punch. I can tune around that with a throttle curve, easily tune a throttle curve into my controller, more easily that I can go back in and mess with the punch on this. So I'm gonna leave this set to max, and if I need to detune it at all, I will do that in my controller. That's one of the advantages to having something like a RadioLink, where you can program in, a lot of controllers you can program in throttle expo, which does add a curve. RadioLink goes a step further where you could really alter the curve more drastically than just with expo. And PWM frequency, we're not messing with that. We're not gonna get into that at all. BEC voltage right now is set to 6 volts. I think I'm gonna leave it. I don't know that this servo can handle 7.4. If I find that it can, I need to look up the specs on this and see if it's a Metal Gear anyway. If it can handle 7.4 or even 8.4, this ESC is capable of that. I doubt it can handle 8.4, but we'll see. Maybe I can get a little more power and speed out of that. And freewheeling is, for a crawler, we suggest enabling it. With it enabled, your crawler can have better linearity during a low speed running and also less heat. It is already enabled. Perfect. Okay, so the program card does not come with the G2 version of the 1080. You will need to buy this separately. I would say this, guys, if you're gonna drop, if you don't have anything lying around, I had this, that's why I'm putting it in here. If you're gonna drop, if you see these for like 40, 45 bucks, I would honestly say, you know what, spend the extra 20 and just go with a Fusion brushless motor ESC combo, the Fusion SE. I've seen them for 65, 70 bucks. It's just overall a better package. And then you don't even have the ESC here. It's all built into the motor. There would be plenty of room in here to run it. And you're just gonna have the added benefit of an even more powerful and even smoother motor. I mean, they are like the ultimate in smoothness and control. So I would recommend, if you're gonna spend the money. Now, if you're on a really tight budget, this is a phenomenal option if you're gonna keep a brushed motor in there. But again, if you got the extra 20 bucks lying around, 25 bucks, just go with the Fusion SE. You're gonna have a lot of the same tuning capabilities, not quite as many, but you're gonna have it in there. And the only other thing you would be lacking would be the remote adjustable drag brake, which is not available on the Fusion SE. So if that's important to you, go with this. This is gonna be my front wheel setup. I do only have 2 brass rings at the time, so I'm just gonna put these on the front. These add quite a bit of weight. So I'm just running these Ascent Fusion stock tires. So I got the blue inserts, my steel wheels, the brass ring, the Fusion Trepador copies. And don't forget, guys, if you are going to be running in water, or I mean, you should vent these regardless, but if you're running in water, I like to vent the actual tread areas. Some guys vent the sidewalls, which is fine, but if you do suck water in through that vent hole, which you definitely will, how's it going to drain out of the sidewall? I like to make a little vent hole in the tread itself. So this way, as you drive or when you get back home, if you just squeeze the tires with the vent hole at the bottom, the water will drain out. So I just use this punch and make 2 little holes in the tread here between the lugs, and this way everything drains nice and you don't get a lot of water buildup in there. So this wheel and tire setup is very heavy in the front, 350 grams. It's going to add a ton of stability to this truck. So I can't wait to get out and test these out. I think they're going to be great on this thing. For the rear wheels, I am just using the standard aluminum beadlock ring. So these end up weighing in at 275 grams a piece. I'm hoping that the front wheels at 350 grams are not going to be too heavy. I think for stability, it's going to be great, but it does worry me a little bit where if the truck takes a tumble, that is a lot of weight on each front corner. These do build up really nice. The silicone inserts just are super easy to install. You don't have to worry about any of the dual stage foam getting bunched up inside. And the best part about these wheels are it's only 6 screws that hold everything together, and you don't have your typical like 40 or 50 screws around the beadlock ring on each side. So really super easy, and these go together really nicely. Okay, so I will link up all of these parts below, the wheels, the scale hardware. The tires, I'm not positive. I guess you can probably buy these from Red Cat if you wanted these, but there are a lot of Trepador clones out there. So if you had to have these exact ones, I will try to find a link to the Red Cat site if they're available. And the silicone inserts, of course, I'll have a link to those. And let's slap this on and get out and run it. So while I'm changing out the stock wheels to these, I'm also going to change out the wheel hexes. And there's a few reasons for that. I picked up a set of these brass wheel hexes off of Amazon. I'll have a link down below. These are 8mm and of course the standard 12mm hex. They come with some extra pins, which are nice to have. But most importantly, they have this little locking set screw on here, and I'll show you the reason for that. If you've taken your wheels off, you'll know that, now imagine doing this on the trail, where'd the pin go? Oh, there it is, it's on the ground, it's down in the dirt, in the weeds, and your hex is stuck in the back of your wheel. So it's super annoying. I can't stand this design, any of these that pop right off. So we're gonna be changing these out. And on top of that, these are just plastic. So with this, this wheel is 350 grams. It's really, really heavy now. So I don't really trust this to hold up as well as it did with the stock plastic wheels, which even then, these are huge risk for breaking these and just leaving you not exactly stranded, but you're gonna be lacking some drive on that one wheel if that thing strips out or rounds out. So as my pin rolls away here, but I'll show you this as well here. These do have this little spacer behind the pin, and it is kind of tapered on one side, so the tapered side goes in so it doesn't rub. You don't have this big flat side rubbing on the bearing. So just make sure these stay on there. I was going back and forth with different wheel hexes and seeing what was gonna fit, and some of them don't really fit properly while retaining the spacer, so it's tricky to find something that fits perfectly, So, and these of course are available in different widths. I did want to add a slight bit more negative offset to these, especially on the rear. The front wasn't a big deal. On the rear, what I was getting a lot while running these bigger, slightly bigger tires, they're a little bigger than stock, they're wider. It was rubbing a lot on the inner fender well back here. So I think setting these out a tiny bit more is gonna kind of alleviate a little bit of that. So what you see with the stock hex here, if I slide this back on, I'll get you in closer here and show you. So you see how much of the unthreaded portion of the axle is sticking out. It's not a ton. It's about, let's say 3mm, borderline 4, right? So now if I swap this out while retaining the spacer behind it, and this does have a little kind of shouldered piece inside that goes in, you'll see that pretty much now sits flush. Focus. that sits flush with the unthreaded portion of the axle now. So you're picking up about 3 millimeters of outward offset. And now the nice thing is you can snug up this set screw, and these are no longer at risk of falling off when you take your wheels off, and it just makes it that much nicer to work on the vehicle when you have to, especially if you're out on the trail and you need to pull the wheel off for any reason. These do add a little bit of weight. You could get aluminum. I went with brass because why not? It's the same price. They're like 5 grams a piece compared to this is, I don't even know, half a gram. So it just adds a tiny bit of weight down low, and you might as well. If you're paying for it, why not go with brass? It's strong, it's gonna hold up well. You really can't go any wider than an 8 without getting into a different type of axle nut that will sit in through, because you start losing the threads that stick out of the nut here. So this is at the very limit. This is about the widest you can go without having issues with the nylon nut making contact, the nylon part of the lock nut making contact with the threads and holding it on there well. And a lot of this might vary depending on your wheel setup. How deep the hex sits into your hub could have a big effect on this. And then I'm putting just a little dab of purple thread lock on these just to make sure they don't come loose. Yep, you can see there, it sits just nice and flush. Perfect. You can see here that the rear tire does rub on the inner portion of the body, the wheel well there pretty badly. So it's not a huge deal, but it did get a little noisy out on the trail, especially running through water. You were starting to get a lot of like squeaky like that kind of noise. So I'm gonna see if this a little bit of added offset is going to change that. Of course, you know, with more offset now, it rubs on this outer fender here as well. It'll make that a little worse, but I think like this is not as big a deal as the entire sidewall rubbing on the inside there. So let's see how that works out. Okay, so that worked out great. I have it made just enough clearance in there where it is not rubbing on the inner fender well. It's also pretty interesting how much 3 millimeters is when you really look at it. It's like, wow, it's very noticeable. But that's okay. Added stability too, in the tiniest bit, you know, just a slightly wide overall 6 millimeter wider track width is gonna add some stability. So if you're into that kind of look, that's fine. Again, you don't have to do the +8. You can go with like a 5 and it would just be the standard offset, but you're gonna get the added benefit of just way more strength, and this being locked on is basically the main benefit of this in my opinion. And putting just a tiny drip of thread lock on the threads here just to be extra safe. Once you run these on and off a few times, the nylon does wear out a little bit, and I'd rather not have loose wheels, so this is just kind of a habit of mine. And I also noticed on the rear axle, it must be a slightly different length. The axle doesn't stick out through the nylon part quite as much, so just to be safe, I would definitely recommend putting on some thread lock onto these. Yeah, that looks great. And I have to say, the added stability is noticeable. The weight on that front wheel just keeps it so planted. And the same thing, lifting the front. Of course, there's more weight on the front wheels, but man, this is gonna be a massive improvement. Let's give it a little flex test here. We could also test out the slow crawl ability when it encounters an obstacle. And it's much better. You can hear it's much quieter, smoother. I'm getting some tire, the rear passenger tire is rubbing on the inner fender, probably the outer fender too on the rear, but starting to, oh, right there. But you see the heavier wheels, that thing would have toppled over. I mean, the way that thing just shifted the weight over, lifted the wheel all in one, but the wheels, the weight of the wheels just kept it planted. You know, you can see it's just way more planted. I don't know if we're gonna have clearance with the bumper. Oh, the light. Yeah, do you see that extra weight on the front wheels from that brass ring? Really doing its job there. Nice tire squish. Yeah, it's so much more stable. Can't wait to get this out on the trail and give it a try. Okay, so I'm happy with these settings. This is the drag brake at 100% and the drag brake rate at the lowest percentage. Let me come in a little hot here. You can tell, like, the stock one was actually skidding. It would lock up the wheels. This one stops really quick, but also controlled, which is the most important part. And of course, with the drag brake off, coasts a bit. Get another weight with everything we just did. We're looking at 44.90. 9 pounds, 14 1/4. So we were at pretty much 8 pounds 8. So we added 14 ounces, nearly a full pound. I mean, that's 2 ounces short of a pound. And pretty much all of that is wheels and tires. Well, that's gonna do it for the first round of mods. Here's a little sneak preview of the running video with all the mods done. Came out really nice, and thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video. Later.